This is lesson 1.5, rewriting equations and formulas. The essential question here is how can you use a formula for one measurement to write a formula for a different measurement? You're going to use this a lot in your science classes and things like that. So when we're rewriting literal equations, an equation that has two or more variables is called a literal equation. To rewrite a literal equation, you're just going to solve it like you would normally solve for a letter or a variable. You would just solve for one of those variables using that other variable, or in terms of that other variable. So rewriting a literal equation. So right now we want to solve this literal equation, 3y plus 4x equals 9 for y. So you're just going to solve this the same way you solve other equations. Right now we want to isolate the y. Just remember what you're wanting to isolate. So in order to isolate the y, we're going to subtract 4x from both sides. So that's going to give us 3y on this side, and then 9 minus 4x on this side. And then to isolate the y, we just need to divide by 3. And remember, we're dividing everything by 3. So y equals, well, you could simplify here and say 3, 9/3 is 3, minus 4/3 x. That is rewriting it in terms of the other variable. So if you wanted to know what y was and you were given x, now you can just solve. So let's look at example 2. Solving the literal equation y equals 3x plus 5xz for x. So what's going to be the easiest way to be able to solve this one? Well, we want to get x by itself. Since x is in both of these and I can't combine them because they're not like terms, I'm going to factor that x out. So you remember when we factored out, because they both have an x, and then I can, 3 times x is going to give me 3x, and then 5 times z will give me 5xz. So now that's factored. So now in order to get rid of the 3 plus 5z, I'm just going to divide by that. 3 plus 5z. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So then we will get that x is equal to y divide 3 plus 5z. That's it, you're done. There's nothing else you can combine. Now, rewriting and using formulas for area, this is where it really comes into science. A formula shows how one variable is related to one or more other variables. A formula is a type of literal equation. So when we're looking at this, we've got the formula for surface area. The formula for surface area of a rectangular prism is S for surface area equals 2 length width plus 2 length width plus 2 width height. Now solve the formula for the length. So what you're going to be looking at here is, first off, we're going to get rid of what doesn't have my L in it, because we want to get the L by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2WH from both sides. So right now, I'm going to have 2LW plus 2LH. And an S minus 2 width height. Now your next step here is we're going to factor out our L again so that we can have our L by itself. So we're left with 2W plus 2H. And again, we just need to divide by that 2W, 2H to get rid of it. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So now I've got this eliminated with this, so we're left with just our L here, and it is going to be equal to the surface area minus 2 times the width times the height, all divided by 2 times the width plus 2 times the height. It's doing the same steps we've done before for like solving VOBs, you know, your variables on both sides, things like that. You've just got to make sure that you just keep your letters and isolate whatever letter they're asking you to. So right here we're using a formula for area. You own a rectangular lot that is 5,000 feet deep. It has an area of 100,000 square feet to pay your new water system. You are assessed $5.50 per foot of lot frontage. Find the frontage of your lot. In other words, this right here is your frontage, which is just going to be your width. So what we're going to do here is, if we have the area, we know that's length times width. Well, I don't know my width, so I'm going to solve for my width. So my width is going to be the area divided by the length. So the width is going to be 100,000 divide 500. So now we know that our width is 200 feet. Don't forget your labels. So there's A. The frontage is 200 feet. Now when we're looking at B, we've been told that it's $5.50 per foot. So $5.50 per foot per 1 foot. And we have 200 feet. Just like when we simplify numbers, we can simplify measurements and dollar signs and things like that. So now we end up with $1,100. So your total assessment is $1,100. So that's part B. Some of our common formulas that we use is when we're converting from like Fahrenheit to Celsius and Celsius to Fahrenheit, simple interest, distance formula, which are given here. That way you can answer the next couple questions. When we're looking at example 5, we want to solve the temperature formula for F. So here's our formula, and we're just going to convert this to find out if we're given Celsius, what Fahrenheit would be. Well, the first thing, instead of distributing, I'm just going to move this fraction over. To move that fraction over, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. So times 9/5. So that's going to cancel this out. So now I've got 9/5 C equal to F minus 32. Kind of easy. Your next step here is just to add 32 to both sides, and you'll end up with F equal to 9/5 C plus 32. So that's how you're going to convert the rewritten formula. So now, how are we going to use that? Using the formulas for temperature, which has the greatest surface temperature, Mercury or Venus? Well, we're going to need to convert one of them. Well, let's look. We'll use our Fahrenheit one we just found in sample 5. So that Fahrenheit equals 9/5 our Celsius, which for Mercury is 427 plus 32. And if you plug those numbers in your calculator, you're going to end up with 800.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we're looking at them, 864 for Venus is going to be greater than the 800 we found for Mercury. So Venus has the greater surface temperature. Now looking at example 7 here, You deposit $5,000 in an account that earns simple interest. After 6 months, the account earns $162.50 in interest. What is the annual interest rate? So first off, we're going to start with our interest rate equals PRT. Okay, so first off, we want to find out what the annual interest rate is. So we need to solve for R. So R is going to be I divided by P and T. So if we sub in the numbers that we know that the initial amount was the interest accumulated was $162.50. And then we've got our principal amount, or the beginning amount, which is $5,000, times our time, which was half a year, so 0.5. Plug that in the calculator and you will find that your rate was a 0.065 rate, or that would be 6.5% interest rate. Now looking at our last example right here, solving a real-life problem. A truck driver averages 60 miles per hour while delivering freight to a customer. On the return trip, the driver averages 50 miles per hour due to construction. The total driving time is 6.6 hours. How long does each trip take? So, to figure this out, step one is we're going to rewrite the distance formula to write expressions that represent the two trip times. And solving the formula, D equals RT for T. So we got D equals RT, and we want to solve for T, so time is distance divide rate. So we know that D divide 60 represents the delivery time, and we know that D divide 50 represents the return trip. Alright? So, use these expressions and the total drive time to solve and write the equation to find the distance one way. So we know that the distance plus 60 plus the distance divide 50, because the distance is the same both way, is equal to 6.6. The sum of the two trips, 6.6 hours. So we're going to go ahead and find a common denominator, which is 300, and we'll end up with 11D equal to 6.6. And if you remember how to get rid of this, we're going to multiply by 300 to get rid of that 300 down there, and we get 11D equal to 1,000. Oops, sorry, I don't know why that just happened. But it's equal to 1,980. And then we divide by 11, and we will find that our final answer is that the distance was 180 miles. Show me your notes and do your clever assignment.